Welcome to GoPowercat.com's Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing. Now, here's Fitz.
Hi, everyone. It's Fitz with another edition of the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by our friends at Weddle & Sons Roofing. If you have roofing needs in Manhattan, around the state of Kansas, or surrounding states, make sure you check out Weddle & Sons Roofing. We feel really good about our decision of going with Weddle & Sons. Kansas State and Arizona State, 6 p.m. at Bill Snyder Family Stadium. Both teams are 7-2 on the season and 4-2 in conference play. If you're Arizona State, that is well over expectations. A team that was picked for one of the bottom rungs on the Big 12 ladder is still in contention to play for the Big 12 championship. It's been that kind of season in the conference. For Kansas State fans, 7-2 and 4-2 might feel a hair disappointing because the Wildcats seem to be chugging along as they went to Houston 2 weekends ago and lost. Leading 19-10 in the fourth quarter, K-State gave up a pair of touchdowns to the Cougars and walked out of rainy TDECU Stadium with a 24-19 defeat. It stung, and it really overturned K-State's hopes for this season because they went from being complete control of their destiny in the Big 12 and getting to the Big 12 championship to needing help. It's not a good position to be in, but here they are. And if you're a fan, and particularly if you're one that hasn't been going to the road games, which a vast majority don't, you miss your Wildcats. You have had one home game since the end of September. Wrap your mind around that. Over the last 6 weeks, Kansas State has played 3 road games, had 2 off weeks, and had Kansas in the middle of that in Bill Snyder Family Stadium. So back-to-back home games in the middle of November, well, they'll take it. And it starts Saturday, 6 p.m. on ESPN with the Sun Devils. That upstart team from Tempe is really playing some great football for young coach Kenny Dillingham. And the star of the show has been running back Cam Scadaboo, who is, I'm not going to be lying here, one of my favorite players I've seen in a long time. He's a bowling ball and can run. He'll flatten you, and he's kind of the heart and soul of this team. He's the leader. But they also won last week, coming back against UCF at home without him. He has been dinged up, but he's expected, as we sit here tonight recording, to go full speed on Saturday. It'll be an interesting game for the Wildcats because they have to win out now to have any chance at the Big 12 title, and someone needs to beat Colorado for that to happen. The chances may look slim, but they look like 0 if you lose this game. If Kansas State comes out flat on an evening where, well, honestly, it's going to be beautiful, it's going to be loud, and it'll be a little bit chilly for the visitors because those southern teams don't like getting below like 45, certainly 55 degrees, somewhere in there. They tend to not like it. We'll see how Arizona State responds to that. But we need to dig deep into this game to find out where K-State's at. That'll be the role of Brien Hanley, our football analyst at GoPowercat and the host of the Big 12 Insiders. Make sure you check out that channel. And then Ryan Wallace will dig into Arizona State as he does for all of the K-State opponents. And later on, we'll hear from Coach Chris Kleiman, quarterback Avery Johnson, as we do every week. And we'll have Ryan Gilbert come in and talk about the spread, the over-under, and some of the other things that he likes to bet on for this game. It's the Powercat Pregame Podcast, brought to you by Weddle & Sons Roofing. Big B standing by, so let's get to him. And there he is, my friend, Brien Hanley. And Big B, this has been a weird phase of Kansas State football. I honestly remember nothing like this in the past. The Wildcats have had one home game since the end of September, and here we are in the middle of November, ready for back-to-back home games, starting with Arizona State on Saturday at the Bill. But what a weird stretch, and no wonder kind of fans are stressed out. You know, they haven't seen their team in person, most of them. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't remember a stretch like this before at any time since I've been following Kansas State almost 30 years. So it is weird, but yeah, you're right. Fans are stressed because they're like, look, man, I haven't seen our team very often. I want to get behind them. I want to root for them, and they just haven't been able to do that.
And they laid an egg last time out. It was at Houston. Chris Kleiman had some interesting comments about that. That we put up in a Deep Purple earlier on Wednesday. It it was interesting. There's so much parity in college football that the distance between the top and bottom of the Big 12 isn't that far anymore. It used to be significant. There used to be a gap in the Big 8 between Oklahoma, Nebraska, and sometimes Colorado and KUK State and many others. And now there isn't. The teams at the bottom are much better. And bluntly, the teams at the top aren't that far out from everyone else as they used to be.
Yeah, parity in college football. That's just basically the name of the game. Transfer portal, NIL has allowed for that to happen. I know people hate it, but you shouldn't. You should embrace it. There's always been haves and have-nots, but that's what parity does for you. The teams at the bottom of the conference, or who you think should be at the bottom of the conference, are better. And the teams that maybe you thought were going to be really good, especially in the Big 12 this year, aren't as good. It's just parity. Everybody's got an opportunity, and I love it.
And this week, as we prepare for a game, what we knew about this conference in the preseason didn't mean a damn thing, because we thought this game with Arizona State would probably be an easy date at the Bill, but it is not. Coach Kenny Dillingham has this Arizona State team rolling. They've got some really effective players, including my man crush, Cam Scadaboo at running back. It's a fun brand of football they're playing, and this is a pretty good team.
Yeah, they're a good football team. They're not getting near enough respect, maybe in the conference, but definitely not around the country.
No,
is what they should have. This is a team that only has 2 losses. I'm not sure that people actually realize that they only have 2 losses, and they're playing really good football. They won a game a couple weeks ago last week without Cam Scadaboo. They won a game a couple of weeks back without their starting quarterback. That one was on the road. I mean, this is a good football team in Arizona State. Kansas State's going to have to play really well to be able to beat them.
I agree. But in some ways, Kansas State's been its worst enemy as of late. Their inability to run the ball, while the defenses have addressed, DJ Giddens and the ability of K-State to really take control of a game. I feel like there hasn't been a proper response to that in terms of altering the running game. They've altered defenses to stop the runs up the middle, right between the guards, and not much has changed with how K-State's approaching. It's got to change.
Yeah, it's got to change. You saw that in the Houston game, but you've seen it basically over the last 3 weeks. Teams have made the adjustment to shut down Kansas State inside running game. So now you have to be able to run wide. You got to make some adjustments. And I understand that maybe that's not what your offensive line does best. I totally understand that. But at some point, they're going to have to do that, because teams, literally, they're just lining up too many guys in the box, and they're not allowing Kansas State to run the football in there. And we can talk about its fundamentals, and maybe some of it is fundamentals. I'll agree with Coach. But there's too many guys there. I mean, if there's more guys in which you can block, I don't care what your fundamentals are. If guys are unblocked, they're just unblocked. So I just think that they've got to get a little bit more creative, and maybe they're able to do that with the bye week and get some more outside runs, do some more things dynamic, do some things that we haven't seen, especially out of that diamond formation that we've seen so much. There's so much that you can do out of that. I saw some teams run it this past week, and I'm like, Kansas State, this is a perfect fit for them. At some point, we got to be able to put that in.
And we know that's partially in the playbook. We've seen it. And we talk a lot about stretching the field horizontally with the deep passing game. In K-State's done that with Jace Brown a little bit, but you got to stretch them horizontally too. You don't need to play the entire football game between the stripes, which K-State does with its running game. It's been a little bit frustrating. But another layered in problem was apparently that Avery Johnson injury at Colorado was a little bit more impactful than what we thought it would be. We knew he didn't run at West Virginia because of it, but we thought he might be fine after that. And he wasn't. I mean, he hasn't been fine. So hopefully now, after about 3 weeks after Colorado and an off week, and now going into this, hopefully Avery Johnson's a bigger threat in the running game, because that opens a lot up.
Yeah, and he's going to have to be against these teams that we're playing down the stretch here. These are two really good football teams.
Yeah.
One pretty good football team in Cincinnati. Avery Johnson's going to have to be able to run the football. Look, if he's banged up, I understand, but there's a lot of people that are banged up this time of the year. Now, if he's banged up to where he can't run, that's different, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. Do you want to keep him as healthy as possible? Yes. Do you not want him to take as many hits or shots that he should than what he should? Of course. But at the same time, it's still football, Fitz.
Right.
And guys are going to get hit. Guys are going to get, bumps and bruises. You got to be able to play through that. That's what this game is all about. And Avery's a huge part of the running game and just a huge part of the offense in general. But the offense is so much better if he's running the football.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. And K-State needs to find more in the passing game. It's just been an ongoing frustration. Once in a while, you'll see them kind of adventure out, and then they get right back to being really conservative. Dude, they got to put receivers in the position to make plays. Hit them in stride, let them run. And so much of K-State's passing game appears to be, go there, I'll throw the ball, you'll get tackled. And it's been that way a long time, and I see other teams, getting explosives out of plays, down the middle. K-State's got to get up the middle of the field in that passing game, don't they?
They do. They got to get it. I mean, they throw the ball down the field from time to time, but it's always between the sidelines and the numbers. Run a post pattern, a flag pattern, something of that nature. But just run up the seams. Got to do some more stuff down the middle, but in the middle of the field. You hardly ever see a dig route from a Kansas State wide receiver. It's almost like they're allergic to running it, which it's a huge part of most teams' offenses because it puts so much pressure on a safety, especially if you can hit a couple of those dig routes. Safety comes down, backside, run a post right over the top, and you're going to have a single high safety looks because Kansas State can run the football so well. So I just don't understand why that's just not in the offense. Maybe we'll put it in this week and be able to utilize it.
We'll see. Let's flip it over to the other side. And Kansas State's defense has been pretty good this year. There have been some issues on the back end that kind of is baffling. Bad tackling, sometimes blown coverage, particularly in zone. But my affection for the way Cam Scatterboo plays might go away by the end of Saturday night, because that's exactly the kind of big, physical, fast running back that has given Kansas State's defense, which is built to be light and fast, a lot of troubles in the past. I think Arizona State's going to come in here and try to hammer him with the run.
I think so too. That would be what I would do. Having said that, Kansas State's pretty good against the run. I know that big backs have given them some trouble in the past, but I think Kansas State is equipped with what they do as far as schematics wise against the run to be able to stop what Arizona State is doing. Does that mean they're going to shut him down to 40 yards or something like that, a la Ricky Williams in 1998? Probably not. But having said all of that, I think they have the opportunity to keep him under 100 yards. And if you do, then that Kansas State has a real good chance of winning. Matter of fact, I would say if they keep Cam Scatterboo from running for 100 yards, Kansas State wins this game maybe by 2 touchdowns.
I agree. I totally agree with that. And how much is being at home going to help this team? I feel like they're, like most teams, better team at home, but right now I feel like it's a substantial difference between home and away.
It is. And this is kind of a young team. And when you're a young team, going on the road isn't your friend. As you get older, you kind of like going on the road because you like playing in a hostile environment. And I know the guys have said that from time to time. And don't get me wrong, Colorado was about as hostile as it gets, and they were able to get a big-time win out of there. But playing at home, especially when you haven't played at home very much, Fitz, over the last, month and a half, it's going to be good for the guys. Having a bye week and then 2 home games in a row is absolutely going to help these guys.
Agreed. Do they get it done against Arizona State?
I think so. Look, we've seen this before, Fitz. We've seen it before. Don't play well, have a bye week, come out of it. Now, I get it. Chris Kleiman hasn't been great out of a bye, but Kansas State traditionally has been. And traditionally, Kansas State has been good after a loss. Chris Kleiman has been very good after a loss. I'll be honest. And the spread, I've seen it 9.5. I've seen it 8.5. I think this one gets away. I really do. I think Kansas State really puts it on them because I think Kansas State is a better football team, and they're going to be embarrassed by what happened at Houston. So I predicted 38-17. and I'm sticking to it. I think Kansas State puts it on them.
And thank you, Big B. Appreciate it very much. And on the other side of this break, we'll bring in Ryan Wallace to take a deeper look at Saturday's opponent, the Arizona State Sun Devils. And we still have Ryan Gilbert standing by. I know you wait for that. And some of the betting lines with the Cats and the Sun Devils. But before that, we'll get to Chris Kleiman with some interesting comments and our weekly chat with Avery Johnson right here on the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing.
It's time to take a break for our sponsors. We'll be back with more from GoPowercat.com.
Weddle & Sons Roofing. Protecting homes, businesses, and providing peace of mind for more than 25 years. Weddle & Sons is your Tesla solar roofing outlet.
Now let's head back to the show for more K-State sports coverage from GoPowercat.com.
Welcome back to the Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing. And now we move on to our scout of Arizona State with our trusty sidekick, with our expert of all, Ryan Wallace. I announced on talk radio on Wednesday that I'm forming a Cam Scattaboo fan club, but only for men, because we're going to be the Scattaboys. And I'm going to stick with that. I love this dude. Give me a comparison, because I can only come up with old ones like Mike Alstead with wheels, or even John Riggins. Sorry, it's KU guy, but he's just different.
Yeah, that's tough. Like it's not unlike people that K-State has honestly faced before, like recently here in the Big 12. Like Taj Brooks at Texas Tech is a really physical runner, and kind of small, squatty like Scattaboo. The Cody, oh my gosh, Cody Schroeder at Missouri last year.
Yeah.
I think kind of ran similar. He didn't have quite the power. He might have had a little bit more kind of make you miss. But again, like Scatterboom, I love the Scatterboom. Can we bring that? The boom
I
guys.
like that too. Bring the Scatterboom.
The Scatterboom. But it's so interesting, Fitz, like when we talk about him, and I won't even get into numbers. Like if you've watched any of Arizona State, you know what this guy can do.
It's hard to
but
explain.
he literally to me is the heart and soul of this team.
Agreed.
Like you go back and watch replays of games with this team, and even if it's not a scoring play from Scattaboo, it might be just something that moves the chains. And you can see the offense get motivation from one of his runs. You can see the defense on the sidelines get motivation from some of his runs, because they know, all right, we've got more time to rest. They're keeping that offense off the field. You see the offensive guys like, yeah, I want to make a block for Cam Scattaboo. It just permeates through that roster. It's wild, Fitz. You in a time of transfers, right, that you feel like you need to load up on all these guys. Sometimes all it could take is one kid, and he is completely transformed. Maybe not him entirely, but he's gone a long way to transforming the culture and everything that is Arizona State. And I'll pass it back to you by saying this, Fitz. We talk an awful lot, deservedly so, about what Deion Sanders has done this over the offseason with Colorado. Yep. What Kenny Dillingham has done at Arizona State might be sliding under the radar.
Yep,
because that culture last year was atrocious. And he went back to the drawing board, kept a couple guys, lost some guys, brought in some new ones. And they are playing with an energy, with a motivation, and a desire that the game is never out of reach for them. And they have won some close games. We'll get into that. Arizona State's done a phenomenal job this year to be where they're at, and also not do it maybe in the way that Colorado's done it.
I agree with all that. But I want to get back to Scattaboo and how he affects you and more schematics here. But I do appreciate what you said about him being in the heart and soul, because I agree. But they won last week without him, and they won a tough game. And I think that was a message that the players are bought in now. Whether or not he led the way, they're all in, and they can win a game, and they've won it without the quarterback too. Love it. Yeah. So there's something going on here, and I hope it doesn't go on in Manhattan, but it could. This is a team that can come in and win.
Well, so it's interesting that you bring that up, because I think what last week proved to me, and and Scadaboo's kind of been in and out at times before where he's gotten kind of nicked up and been able to come back. But what I thought it proved to me, and this is going to sound wild to some folks, to me, Scadaboo is the juice of this team, right? I mean, he is the soul, the juice, the energy. Levitt to me is the straw that stirs the drink.
I agree.
If there's a player that I'm most, interested to see how K-State wants to game plan, and a guy that I think could be the deciding factor in Arizona State losing, winning, or just being competitive in Manhattan, it's Levitt. Because to me, if you allow Scadaboo to get going, Scadaboo to me is like, Devin Neal, DJ Giddens, if you're an opponent of Kansas State, RJ Harvey at UCF, these guys have proven over time, like they're going to get theirs. Like you can try and scheme ways to take Cam Scadaboo out. And like, there's something about his style that he's just going to probably rack up some yards on you. Maybe he doesn't go for 200, 250, but like he's going to get yards. He's going to be a difference maker. What you don't want if you're K-State and other opponents, as we've seen, the more Sam Levitt has gotten kind of his feet under him, so to speak, is if you get him going as a runner and now you have to worry about him and Scadaboo, that's when you start seeing the safeties and the linebackers and the cornerbacks start peeking in the backfield. And that's when Arizona State will kind of hit you, because Jordan Tyson's been phenomenal. Chris Kleiman talked about him at his press conference this week about the receiver from Texas, a transfer that they brought in that's kind of been stepped up to the plate for a receiving core that hasn't been overly superb. It's kind of like K-State-esque, right? It's like Jace Brown and some other guys. That's kind of what it's been like for Arizona State. But they've started to get him going a little bit. So you kind of got to honor some of their receiving ability. Levitt hasn't really thrown a lot of like dangerous passes. He's not been a turnover machine for being an underclassman player that came into the season without a lot of experience. If you get Levitt going outside the pocket, and he's not Avery Johnson, he's not Garrett Green, but he's dynamic enough to be dangerous. You're going to get Scadaboo going. That's to me when Kenny Dillingham can really unlock this offense, and that's when, if you're Joe Klanderman, you've got issues.
I would agree with all that. And again, I don't want to sound overly complimentary of an opposing player, but Coach Kleiman, after that Houston loss, said, we got to get back to fundamentals. We got to do it. I'm telling you what, Wally, everyone heard offensive line performance, got to get back to fundamentals. With this game, I'm hearing if this defense doesn't tackle fundamentally and gang tackle, get to the ball, it's going to be a problem. If I see a safety come up, try to tackle this guy by the shoulders, he's going to get humiliated. And they've done some of that. And they better get back to that gang tackling that, they've done so for other really good running backs. But once in a while, those powerhouse backs give K-State problems.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm right there with you in terms of missed tackles. I've been at home here in the living room or here in the basement and about thrown my phone through the television set. If I got to watch some of these guys again, like you said, tackle at the neck, tackle at the shoulder pads, they're going to get thrown. It'll be like a carousel on Cam Scadaboo. Even I've seen Fitz even run through some tackles at his ankles. So I'm with you. I think it's going to have to be tackle by committee, gang tackle. He's going to absorb and go past first contact. He's averaging almost 4 yards per carry after contact, Fitz, which for those that are, looking for comparison, DJ Giddens is kind of in that same boat. I mean, and we all know what kind of season DJ Giddens is having, and Cam Scadaboo is much shorter and much more compact. So, I mean, different running styles, but yeah. And that's why Fitz kind of finishing off on the K-State defense here. I think linebacker is kind of the easy one to pick on as needing to have a good game. And honestly, Fitz, what we've seen from Austin Romaine, what we've seen from Austin Moore, I'm confident that those guys are going to get the job done. Their fundamentals, their technical stuff hasn't really been the problem. The defensive line, I think, for the most part, has by and large has done their problem or done their job in containing and getting pressure. I'm not worried about them either. Is Cam Scadaboo probably going to get through the front line more often than not? Probably so, even with K-State's defensive line, but I like the front. This is a monstrous game to me for the safeties. Again, I talked about the receivers. There aren't a lot of super dynamic weapons that they need to be, on their heels about. Are they going to have to come up and help in run support? Yes. But I'm looking at VJ Payne. I'm looking at Jordan Riley. I'm looking at Marquise Siegel, Jack Fabris, Colby McAllister. Those guys coming downhill in space while also honoring the pass. They got to be communicating on Saturday night, Fitz, and they have got to be assignment sound. I think as the safeties go in this one, I think K-State could go, not necessarily in wins and losses, but in terms of their defensive effectiveness and what Joe Clairman wants to be able to do with his game plan.
I'd put Jack Fabris on the field more. I just would. Just
a great game
in a game like this, because he's going to come up and hit you. Come to think of it, I'm a fan club president of his too, the Fabros. Let's move on. I don't know. I just took a nap. I'm really spicy right now. Let's flip it over. K-State had some offensive issues at Houston. Might have been weather related, might have been play calling, might have been performance. Doesn't really matter. They got to fix it. But I think one thing we will see, at least maybe I'm just being an optimist, is that Avery Johnson was more hurt than what we thought, more injured than what we thought. We thought the kind of no run game at West Virginia, it would be great. And, maybe we got outfoxed and told some stuff that wasn't true. So KU had to worry about it. But he wasn't a big running threat the next 2 weeks with Kansas or Houston. And I think they got to get back to that. And the question is he able to get back to that? I would think so at this point, or it's something much worse than we ever thought.
Yeah, and it's not me disagreeing with you, because I think they need if you want to call it, the old Avery back. I mean, there's no question about it, because he unlocks those other assets, similar to what I was talking about with Levitt, but to another level for K-State, just because of how elite of a runner he is. They need that. They could use that this week, because, again, it unlocks so many other facets. But at the same time, Fitz, I think just getting back to DJ Giddens pounding the rock. You look at this front for Arizona State. I like some of their linebackers, Crooks, McCullough, Keyshawn Elliott from Richmond, Missouri, right outside Kansas City, a guy that I lobbied for and K-State passed on, and here he is doing great things at Arizona State. I won't get into that, but they
just did.
I won't elaborate more on it then. So we'll put it that way. They've been fairly, I think, effective. Like, I think in tackling and run support type stuff, they've done their job. But I think that the front line for Arizona State, it's the lowest tackle for loss defense in the Big 12. PFF grades them as the lowest pass rush as well. They've got 101 missed tackles on the season, which I think K-State's in the 90s, but a lot of that, again, isn't because I think K-State is poor tackling. I think they just kind of have brain farts that drive Chris Kleiman and Joe Clairman nuts. I do see some of the secondary kind of not coming up and being assignment sound in some of their run fits. So all that to say, this is a game that K-State's offensive line can control, get back to winning the line of scrimmage. Then you get DJ Giddens going. Then you get Avery Johnson going. Then you start to unlock that wide receiving core. Get back to the West Virginia game plan. Get back to the Arizona game plan. I know they needed Dylan Edwards to get that punt return going to really spark that night. But there were so many other things when I go back and watch that game that I'm like, why isn't that the K-State offense that we see week to week? This is a great opportunity. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Arizona State. Like, it's not like, because I think we said some of this about Houston last, 2 weeks ago, and it proved wrong, right? Of just play your base stuff and you'll get out of there with a win. But I really do think in this, in this particular matchup, K-State can get back to winning the line of scrimmage, giving DJ Giddens the ball, and overpowering the front seven for Arizona State and going from there. It shouldn't be about pass first, then open the run. I really do think they can get by with doing, the base stuff and going from there. Because Arizona State's going to be multiple fits. Like, Brian Ward is a guy that K-State knows really well. He worked with Steve Stannard. AJ Cooper is a linebackers coach for Arizona State, former North Dakota State tight end. Like, there are guys that they should know the defensive tendencies here. This is a game plan that I think Connor Riley should be able to sniff out some things right away with what Brian Ward wants to do, and be on the offensive, literally, on Saturday night.
I agree with all that. Also, let's take a moment to talk about Dylan Edwards. Fans are still clamoring for to get touches. I felt like he got some opportunities that Houston didn't do much with him. I've come to the belief now that he's just off his game because one, he feels like he needs to make a big play every time he touches the ball because he doesn't get that many opportunities. But two, you mentioned that return against Arizona. I see him trying to get the edge every time, and you can't, particularly on returns. That was kind of a rarity. If you get to the edge, it's usually you cut out after going up, not straight to the edge. And he keeps doing that. I just think he's in a situation now where it's self-fulfilling prophecy that he's not going to do much because he's pressing and he's kind of developed some bad habits.
Pressing is a good word, and I think it's kind of both sides have put themselves in this position, I think, with where they're at with Dylan Edwards. I think Dylan feels like, okay, I'm not going to get the touches that I feel like I deserve, so I'm going to push the issue. And all the things that you said are true to the point where, there was a return in the Houston game that I think he got a little bit of an earful when he came off the sideline. It was the punt return, I think, near the goal line that they were unhappy about. And I think that's partially just Dylan saying, I'm trying to do something here for you guys. And if I'm only going to be on the field for X amount, I got to push it. And then I think the coaches sometimes get caught. Like, now they're second guessing themselves. Should we have had Dylan out there? Should we have Dylan out there more? It's just been a situation that I feel like if they had handled it a little bit better on both sides, they'd be in better shape now. I don't know, how you correct it. I don't even know if correct is the right word, Fitz, but like if there's a better way,
yeah,
something's got to be done.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully he has a good game. The weather's going to be much better than what he had in Houston. That you could tell that wet surface affected him in Houston. It just kind of slowed him down. He got tracked down from behind. It was odd to see.
That was odd.
Does K-State do this?
So I think it will be a very, very competitive game because I look at, again, Arizona's culture. They're not very good on the road. They've won, I know they've won two recent ones here with like Oklahoma State, and you go back to UCLA last year, but they're against teams that are combined 14-22. I found this stat, Fitz. Since 2017, omitting the COVID year, Arizona State has won 4 of 12 road games in the month of November. Not only that, but the 4 wins came against opponents with a combined record of 14-22. Oklahoma State, for instance, this year was one of them. But more interestingly, though, is all those games, or the past 2, UCLA and Oklahoma State, the most recent wins, came on game day temperatures of 60 to 70 degrees. We're looking at projections I've seen that are like low 50s, south winds gusting, potential of some precipitation in there. I think that could play a factor here with Arizona State, especially when you hear Kenny Dillingham talking at practice earlier this week about how it was 68, almost 70 degrees at their outdoor practice. I get that you have transfers that are from all over the country, but again, when you get used to practicing in that kind of weather, and you're going against a team that, as you correctly point out, Fitz, and I think it's important, hasn't played a home game since September, right? Like, that doesn't bode well for your chances. So again, I look at Arizona State. They trailed early in the 4th against UCF. They were up by 1 late in the 4th against Utah, trailed late in the 4th against KU, tied midway through the 4th against Texas State, up by 1 score on Mississippi State with like 6 minutes remaining. They won all of those games. So they find a way to keep themselves in games. They're both their losses on the season were by an average of 9 points. Point being, I think the spread is accurate with like 9.5. I think it'll be kind of a 10 to 14 type of game for K-State. So it could be a little uncomfortable because Arizona State's going to keep themselves in it. But I think this is a game that K-State is going to win. Fitz, I think they're fired up. I think the staff was embarrassed about Houston. I think this team was embarrassed about Houston. I think they know that everything's still on the table, but they got to go out and do their job. And I think they know that all eyes are on them right now. They're watching Iowa State stumble. They're watching Colorado, take off. And they know that if we can just keep up the pace and hope for, a BYU stumble, hope for a Colorado stumble, we are right there. And I think knowing that they've got a 7-2 team is almost better for K-State right now than if we saw the Arizona State that we kind of expected preseason to come in here. I like K-State in this one. I don't think it's going to be out of control, but I like K-State to get it done.
You know, I'm going to reveal one of my keys to victory will probably be get up by 2 scores in the fourth quarter, because what could possibly go wrong? Sorry, too soon. Too soon. That's it from Ryan Wallace with your preview of Arizona State. We got more coming up after this break. We have Chris Kleiman, Avery Johnson, and Ryan Gilbert, the triad of knowledge. We'll be right back. We're sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing.
It's time to take a break for our sponsors. We'll be back with more from GoPowercat.com.
Weddle & Sons Roofing. Protecting homes, businesses, and providing peace of mind for more than 25 years. Weddle & Sons is your Tesla solar roofing outlet.
Now let's head back to the show for more K-State sports coverage from GoPowercat.com.
Thank you for returning to the Powercat Pregame Podcast. We got 2 of 3 sections down, and now we need to move into our wrap-up section with Chris Kleiman and Avery Johnson, the coach and quarterback, from Monday's press conference, before we get to Ryan Gilbert and some of those gambling lines in this game. And it was an interesting press conference. I did another video of Deep Purple on some of the stuff Chris Kleiman talked about, but we're going to zero in on Arizona State in this one. And of course, he started with talking about Cam Skattebo, the running back I love so much, and probably most K-Staters won't like that much by the end of this game. He's a special player, and Chris Kleiman gives him his flowers, as they say. And then we'll talk to Avery Johnson about how he's feeling and looking forward to this game as they have a chance to respond to that loss after taking a week off, and it wasn't a fun time. Let's get to Chris Kleiman, Avery Johnson, and then bring in Ryan Gilbert. Here is Coach Kleiman.
Yeah, he's a stud. He's a downhill guy, but he's got enough quickness. He's got great hands out of the backfield. He'll pass protect. He's an every down back. Fun kid to watch. He breaks tackles. You're not going to arm tackle him. He's had a tremendous year, one of the best years in the Big 12, and deserves all the accolades that he's receiving, and he's a terrific player.
And then with all that extra practice time for the younger guys, did anyone show any indication of maybe being able to help you out in this home stretch?
Yeah, I just look at our offensive line, some of those young guys, Kyle Rockers, Gus Hawkins, and Navarro Shunke, Caden Massey, that Ryan Howard, all those young kids, getting those guys an opportunity because they don't have that opportunity a whole lot. I just feel like that young crew in the O-line, they're not ready. They're still progressing, but they're bigger, they're stronger. They're having a great fall with Coach True. They just got to, compound that with having a phenomenal winter so that they can get in the mix next year.
Last time we spoke with you after the game, you mentioned fundamentals, getting back to basics. Was that something you accomplished?
Well, with our guys that practiced, we always are working those things. This week, because we took so much time with those older guys to get them back a little bit, we'll probably do a little bit more good on good so that we get speed on speed. That's something that when you take the time off that we did, we want to be able to have our ones go against our twos and vice versa. Plus, we're down a few guys, so we won't do as much scout team. We'll get some good on good, and I think that's important when you come off of an open week, that you don't just stay scout team for a whole week and expect you to be able to catch up with the speed of the game, because there's an advantage that Arizona State has. They're continuing to play, and they've got a rhythm. We've got to find that rhythm this week in practice.
You talked about Skattebo, who's absolutely a blast to watch, but if you're not fundamentally sound with him, you're in trouble, aren't you?
Yeah, you are. He's going to make you miss. He's going to run over you. He's not going to get tackled by an arm tackle. He's going to push the pile forward, and they're playing really well up front. And I really like their quarterback. I think he's a perfect fit for what they're doing. I think Coach Dillingham's done a phenomenal job. They've had some success in the transfer portal for sure. Second year in the system, those guys are playing with a lot of confidence. They have a wide receiver that is as good as we've seen in the league. He's making play after play. And I know a lot of the defensive guys. I know the D coordinator and the linebacker coach, Brian Ward and A.J. Cooper. They're great coaches. They're great human beings. They're playing at a high level. I know they probably didn't play as well as they wanted to against UCF, but I also know B. Ward and I know Coop. They'll have those guys firing on all cylinders.
What do they show defensively?
Probably a little bit more 4 down, like some of the others. We get about half and half now between 4 down and 3 down. They're very aggressive. They have really good design blitzes that are hard to see. Sometimes you get teams where it's easy to see the blitz. These guys it's not easy to see. They do a great job disguising. They've been tackling well. They've been creating turnovers, and they've been disruptive up front. I like their front.
A lot of guys got to heal our bodies up, get some rest. But, man, I'm excited to get back and play again. I was watching a lot of games Saturday and just eager to get back on the field. So,
pitch you this, and you'll probably give me one word answer, but how's your body feel?
Pretty good.
What does this team need to work on here in this week as you get ramped up for these final 3 games?
I think the biggest thing is just getting back to what we're good at. Offensively, got to be more explosive, got to be more consistent. I got to be better, got to take better care of the football. Receivers, we got to block better on the perimeter. Got to get our run game going. I mean, everybody has the things they got to focus on that we have to focus on offensively, and it's my job to not let anybody try to cut corners or anything this week at practice. Got to just look in the mirror and figure out what each individual can do to get better, and then just attack it and not try to make any more excuses. We got to win games from here on out, and that's ultimately what we're going to continue to try to do.
And now it's time to turn our attention from the important people like Chris Kleiman and Avery Johnson and bring in our own Ryan Gilbert. Not that he's not important. He just isn't the starting quarterback important. Okay. He's got less importance to the team than that, but we still love him. And we love his betting advice. He dishes out every pregame show, what the lines are on this game and what some of the over-unders he might want to be looking at when they get released. Because when we record this, there ain't much out there, is there, Gills?
No. And I don't know I know we were talking beforehand, Scadaboo's status. I know he's probably going to play, but maybe it takes the odds makers just a little bit of time to catch up to that. So, yeah, if you're watching this early in the week on Thursday, maybe you come back on Friday.
Well, let's start there with Cam Scadaboo because he's really impactful. Probably why we haven't, as we record this on Wednesday afternoon, we haven't seen a lot of betting information on this game because Cam Scadaboo changes the outlook of the game. He just does. He's going to move the line. He's going to move yardage. There's a lot of things going on here. I think he will play. I don't see a world in which he doesn't, unless it's really a serious injury and they're kind of being sneaky with this. But I think he plays, and you think he'll score? I don't know.
I do. Yeah. And obviously if he, Kenny Dillingham said that unless something changes, he is going to play. That was as of Wednesday. And so, yeah, he's scored in every single game. I didn't just pick this because he's kind of the star player. He scored in all but one game for Arizona State this season. And the one game he didn't score, he had 262 rushing yards, Fitz. So he's obviously a superstar. Anybody that's watched college football knows how special he is. There's a lot of special running backs in this league, but why I like him to score is because, he's all but one game he's found the end zone at least one time. It's probably going to be minus money and maybe not the best odds or value, but throw that in the parlay, I think is probably smart.
Yep, I would definitely agree. But let's back up now. We're picking this game on 9.5 spread. It might be at 8.5, and it'll probably move with Scadaboo's, for sure when we know what that is. But let's go with 9.5. That's a big number for the Big 12. It's one of the things I love about this conference is you don't get a lot of double-digit spreads in this league. Even on the road, generally the games are close. I feel like that's a okay number, but I think this is going to be a really good football game if he plays.
On paper, you would think that, but Kansas State's just been so good, so dominant at home under Chris Kleiman throughout the Iowa State loss from last year. I know I always harp on this, but they're just different. And I mentioned this in the Behind Enemy Lines piece that I did for our friends for the Arizona State site. It's not that Bill Snyder Family Stadium is daunting or intimidating for the opponents per se. I think BYU and Colorado were more hostile than what we have in Manhattan. However, K-State just plays so calm, so confident, so poised when they know that they have that home crowd behind them. It makes a big difference. And so to cover that spread, I would assume, I haven't looked through all of your guys' picks, but I would assume most are picking the away team here. It is a lot of points, especially after the way Kansas State played. I know our fan poll on Wabash was overwhelmingly Arizona State to cover. Interesting stuff. You don't usually see that on a K-State site, so I get it all. But at home after a bye week to cover that spread, I think Kansas State can get that done.
I think people still have a really strong hangover from the Houston game, and I get that. I think we all do have a hangover from what happened there, but I also think it's not indicative of what this team's going to be the rest of the year. As we've always said for years, and Chris Kleiman's harped on it, every game's self-contained. It's all different. But one of the things we really don't know about with K-State is Avery Johnson. He's been limited in his ability to run the last 3 games, but now he's had 3 games where he hasn't run much. He hasn't taken as many hits, and he had a week off. We talked about maybe doing rushing yardage, but we don't really have that prop right now. We don't know where it's at. I'm going to personally keep an eye on that one just to see where they put it, because I think he's going to be more mobile in this game. But you do have a thought on his passing yards.
Yeah, especially after a bye week, you would think he's more healthy and able to be a mobile quarterback. But I like the passing here for Johnson just because it's kind of been the blueprint, excuse me, for opposing defenses to sell out and stop that run. You would probably assume Arizona State's going to do something similar with the bye week to kind of combat that. Maybe K-State changes some schematics with its run, but at the end of the day, man, if you're loading the box, trying to stop that run, wideouts and tight ends are going to be open. It's on Avery to find them and execute, but they're going to be there. And so with an extra week to watch the film, get healthy, I know I'm not going to say no on that rushing total, Fitz, but through the air, man, I just think this kind of is going to be a game that lines up well. I would caution on the running backs. DJ Giddens hasn't been, I wouldn't say he hasn't been himself lately, but statistically he hasn't. And so I think through the air, K-State can win this game.
And if Avery's got passing yards, someone needs to catch the ball, and you believe who that will be.
Jaden Jackson. I think this is kind of a game, not just one game, but 3 games. Fitz, we did the piece on GoPowercat during the bye. The one player that needs to step up, my guy was Jaden Jackson. And so Keegan Johnson and Jace Brown, we kind of know what they're going to be, know what you're going to get from them. And so I would assume Arizona State's going to have a nice emphasis on guarding those 2 guys. That's going to leave the door open, assuming they sell out to stop that run. That's going to leave the door open for somebody to step up as sort of a quote unquote wide receiver number 3. Jaden Jackson's been, more than capable of doing that in a purple jersey. There's some guys like, Sterling Lockett who maybe have upside potential to pop out, or Dante Cephas who's, played at Penn State, but in a purple jersey, Jaden Jackson has been that guy. He's scored countless touchdowns for this team over the years. And so I think this is a Jaden Jackson game. If you think I'm crazy, you want to go with a different wideout or even a tight end, by all means, go for it. I just think Jaden Jackson's kind of the guy to break out here.
Okay, one more to go. The over-unders at 50.5 seems low to me. What do we decide? The odds indicated score is going to be 20, 29, 20, 30, somewhere in there, 21, 30. That just seems low for a K-State home game. There's not many defensive struggles for the Wildcats there, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, real quick, I had this noted down with the spread. Chris Kleiman hasn't lost back-to-back games. November 26th of 2021 on the road at Texas when they lost. And so that's just one more reason why I love K-State to cover here. He doesn't lose back-to-back games. History shows that. But I like the over. Fits for kind of 3 reasons. Number one, I think this is kind of just going to be a college football game. That makes sense.
Yep.
A lot of offense and under the lights, ESPN primetime. I think there's just going to be a lot of scoring, especially with K-State after a bye week. Number 2, Fitz,
in Big 12 play, Kansas State has either missed the over by 3 points or less, or have gone over. So in the last, 6 games, it's either been over or it's barely been under. And so that's a reason to like the over. Number 3, Fitz. This is just a lower. I think this is probably the 3rd, maybe 4th lowest point total for a K-State game this year. So that's another reason to like the over. I get it. Arizona State wants to run. Kansas State probably in theory wants to run, but if you're not able to do that, you're going to air it out and throw it. I know Leavitt, their quarterback is mobile. He can run it, but also he's not a terrible passing quarterback. It's not where their bread gets buttered per se, but both teams are capable of doing some stuff through the air. This was something I found in my pregame edge piece. K-State's through the first 4 games of the year was the worst statistically in the Big 12 in terms of passing yards per game. Over those next 4 games, K-State was absolutely one of the best in the country. I think it was like 262 yards per game through the air. Obviously, against Houston was kind of a forgetful game with the weather and all of that. So, that's kind of an all-encompassing answer with the passing for Avery to get going and have a wideout step up like Jaden Jackson kind of favors towards K-State covering, favors the over. So I think it's going to be a good couple of weeks in Manhattan as Kansas State can set up a season finale in Ames. That means a lot for at least Kansas State, probably Iowa State as well.
Very good. It's Ryan Gilbert. He will be on hand at the game covering it for the good folks that read GoPowercat. And he's always here for the pregame show to give us his thoughts on the betting odds. Thanks, Gills.
Thank you.
And that will pretty much do it for the Powercat Pregame Podcast. I appreciate Ryan Gilbert's help there with the betting lines around this game. And, of course, Brien Hanley and Ryan Wallace doing the heavy lifting with the breakdowns of K-State and Arizona State. These 2 teams have matching records and matching hopes of making it to the Big 12 title game. They will need some help to get there, but winning this game is an essential step. The game kicks off at 6 p.m. at the Bill and will be broadcast on ESPN. So if you're going to watch from home, you can find it there. Hopefully the game before it will get over in a timely fashion. And of course, we will be there for GoPowercat.com. The Powercat Postgame Podcast will take place Sunday morning with myself and Cole Carmody talking about the game. Maybe someone else will join us. We will find out. But between now and then, it's the Cats and the Sun Devils at the Bill. And I hope I will see you at the Bill too.
Thank you for watching GoPowercat.com's Powercat Pregame Podcast, sponsored by Weddle & Sons Roofing. This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production.